In today's video, we are going to be talking about graphs. More specifically, we are going to be talking about how to find the equation of a graph. As you should already know, the general formula for the equations of a straight line graph is y equals mx plus c. Both y and x refer to the Cartesian plane, which, as you all know, is made up of our y and our x-axis, and m and c are values which we need to find. M refers to the gradients of the line, which tells us how steep the line is. So if our value for m was high, we would have a rather steep graph which would look like that, whereas if we had a small value for m, you would see the graph would look something more like that, obviously not as steep. M can also tell us whether the graph has a positive or negative gradient. A positive gradient would look like this, whereas a negative gradient would be in the opposite direction and would look like that. C, on the other hand, tells us what the y-intercept is. That simply tells us how high or how low our line cuts the y-axis. So if we already knew what the gradient of a line was, for example, if we knew that the gradient was 1, we would then look at our c value to determine at which point our line cuts the y-axis. So if our gradient was 1 and we were told that c was 3, we would know that our line would have a gradient of 1 and would cut the y-axis at 3. So that is what our line would look like. So for question 1, we can see that we have got a straight line graph, and they have given us a few points, and they ask us to find the equation of the straight line graph. Now, as we all know, straight line graphs have a general formula of y equals mx plus c. This means that there are two values which we need to find. We need to find m and we need to find c in order to find the equation of this straight line graph. We can start off by finding m, and as you should all know, m equals y1 minus y2 over x1 minus x2. This is a formula that you will all need to know off by heart. So from here, we now need to select 2 points. These will be 2 points that we know are on the graph. So by looking, we can see that 4 and 5 is a point, 1 and minus 1 is a point, 0 and minus 3 is a point, and 2 and minus 7 is also a point on our graph. So for the sake of this example, I'm going to pick 4 and 5 as a point, as well as 1 and negative 1. You could have chosen any 2 points. You could have chosen minus 2 and minus 7 and 4 and 5. It does not matter which 2 points you chose, you will get the same answers. I'm then going to let this be my point 1 and this be my point 2. So I can then substitute values into this formula for m. So given that this is my point 1, we then find y1, and that is 5. Now we minus. We now find y2, and we can see that that is minus 1. Alright, then x1 would be 4, and x2 would be 1. So if we simplify this, we get 6 over 3, and that equals 2. We have just found our value for m, and we found that it is 2. Therefore, we can say that y equals 2x plus c. And all that is left for us to find would be c. To find c, we need to substitute one of these points into our function. So once again, you can pick any point you like. So for the sake of this example, let us pick the point 0 and -3. Okay, so now we need to substitute this point into this function. And we do that, or rather we are able to do that, because here we have an x value, which is 0, and we also have a y value, which is -3. So we substitute this point in for x and for y. It would have been the same if we had chosen 4, 5, where x would have been 4 and y would have been 5. So we can rewrite this by substituting it in, and instead of y we've got -3. This equals 2. What was x? I told you that x was 0 and plus c. Therefore, we've got that 0, or rather -3 equals 2 times 0, which gives us 0 plus c. Therefore, c equals -3. Now, we take this, or rather this answer of c equals -3, and we substitute it in there. Therefore, we can say that y equals 2x minus 3. We have now found values for m and c, and we are therefore finished, as we have found the equation for that straight line graph. For question 3, we are once again asked to find the equation of the straight line graph. Once again, we can see that the general formula for a straight line graph is y equals mx plus c. To start off, we need to find m. And we know that this equals y1 minus y2 over x1 minus x2. And we now need to find 2 points which we can substitute into this formula. Once again, it does not matter which 2 points you choose. So for the sake of this example, I'm going to pick this point over here, which is 3 and 9, as well as this point over here, which is 0 and 3. So we can let this be our point 1, which would mean that this is our point 2. Okay, so y1 would then be 9 minus y2, which is 3. This is over x1, which would be 3 minus 0. This would give us 6 over 3, and that equals 2. Therefore, we have just found our value for m, which was 2. So we can rewrite our formula, and it will be y equals 2x plus c. Once again, we are now left with finding c. Once again, to find c, we need to substitute in one of the points on our graph. Once again, it does not matter which point we pick as long as it is a point on our graph. So for the sake of this example, let's pick 0 and 3 as a point to substitute in. Remember, this point is made up of an x and a y component, and that is how we substitute this point in. So, when we're substituting it into this equation, we see that y is 3, and this equals 2. Now what was x? From our point, x is 0 plus c. And this becomes 3 equals 0 plus c. Therefore, c equals 3. Now, we substitute this back into our equation, and we get that y equals 2x plus 3. Now we have found a value for m, we have found a value for c, and we have that y equals 2x plus 3, and this is the final answer for question number 3, as we have found our formula for the equation of a straight line. Once again, for question 5, we are asked to find the equation of the straight line graph. So, as we keep doing, we're going to say that m equals y1 minus y2 over x1 minus x2. Okay, so we now need to have a look at our graph to find 2 points. And as we can see, this point is in bold, so we know that the point 2 and 1 is on our graph. And we know that this is a point on our graph. So we have 0 and minus 3. So we now need to decide which is point 1 and point 2. So we can make this point 1 and we can make this point 2. Once again, it does not matter which one we let be point 1 and which one we let be point 2. So to find m, we then are going to say y1 minus y2. So we've got 1 minus 3 over x1, which is 2, minus x2, which is 0. And this gives us 4 over 2, which equals 2. Therefore, m equals 2. So we can rewrite our equation, which is y equals 2x plus c. Now we just need to find c, and to do that we substitute in one of the points. Now we're going to choose point 0 and minus 3 for this example. It doesn't matter if you chose point 2 and 1, you will still get the same answer. So for this example, we've got that y equals minus 3. So we say minus 3 equals 2. And what was x? We said that x was 0. So we say 0 there instead of x, and plus c. Now we can simplify this, and we get minus 3 equals 2 times 0 will just be 0, so we can leave that out. And then we keep the c. So therefore, c equals minus 3. Now we can substitute this value in for c, and we get that y equals 2x minus 3. And that is the final answer for question number 5. Question number 7. So as you should have figured by now, we start off by trying to find m. And we know that that equals y1 minus y2 over x1 minus x2. Next step is to find the points on the graph. So we can see that this point is given in bold as well as this point. So if we have a look at the first one that I circled, we can see that that is 4 and minus 4. So we can write that in. And for the second point, we see that that is 0 and 3. Okay, so now we can substitute those points in. So we can let this be point 1 and this be point 2. So we get that m equals, now what was y1? That would be minus 4. y2 would be 3, so we say minus 3 over, now x1 was 4 minus x2 is 0. So we can simplify and get that minus 4 minus 3 is minus 7, and 4 minus 0 is just 4. Therefore, as we can see, this cannot be simplified any further, and m equals minus 7 over 4. So we can rewrite our equation as y equals minus 7 over 4x plus c. Now we are just left with the task of finding c. To do that, we substitute in one of the points that are on our graph. So for this example, let's choose 0 and 3 as our point to substitute in. So for that point, y is 3. We just rewrite the formula, but we are substituting in values for x and y. So for this point, we said that y was 3, and x will therefore be 0. So we substitute all of that in, and we get that 3 is equal to, now minus 7 over 4 times 0 is just 0, so we can leave that out, and then we drop the c. Therefore, we've got that c equals 3. We substitute this back into our equation, and we get that y equals minus 7 over 4 plus 3. And we are finished with question number 7. Lastly, question number 9. We have this graph provided for us, and we are once again asked to find the equation of the straight line. So we start off m equals y1 minus y2 over x1 minus x2. So we find our points on the graph, and we see that we are given this point over here, which is 0 and minus 3, and we're given this point over here, which is minus 4 and minus 1. Alright, so we can then substitute those points into our function for m, given that this is point 1 and this is point 2. So we say that this equals, now what is y1? Minus 3. y2 is minus 1, minus 1, all over x1 is 0, minus x2 is minus 4. So we can simplify this and get that m equals minus 2 over 4, which we can simplify to minus 1 over 2. Therefore, m is equal to minus 1 over 2. So we can substitute that back into our formula. Now we are just left with trying to find c. So to find c, as we know, we need to substitute in one of these 2 points. So for our example, let's substitute in 0 and minus 3. So we get that y equals minus 3. And remember, we found that m equals minus 1 over 2. Substitute in our value for x, which is 0, and we add c. Therefore, if we multiply the minus 1 over 2 by 0, we get 0. So we could get that minus 3 equals 0 plus c. Therefore, c equals minus 3. And we can substitute this into our general formula, and we get that y equals minus 1 over 2 plus, or rather, minus 3. And that is our final answer for question number 9.